Welcome, folks. My name is Tom Beatty. I am the chair of the Web Design and Development program at Newmont College of Computer Science, and today we're going to learn about Express using Node.js. Okay, so we're going to use Node.js now to create a simple web server. So I'm still in my basics folder from the last video, and I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call it server.js. And the first thing that I want to do is say const http equals require, which we are telling Node that we want to require the HTTP module and put it into this object HTTP. And then I'm also going to define which port we're going to use, and we're going to use port 3000. Now I'm going to set up my server. Const server equals HTTP create server, and we're going to pass in a function, and it's going to have two parameters. It'll have request and response. Request is the data that someone trying to access our web server would be sending, a request for a web page, for instance. The response is what we send back. So we'll have an arrow function. And now we create our response. And so our response is going to start out with write head. That's the header. In the first part of the header, we're going to send back a 200, which in HTTP terms says it's okay. So now I'm going to pass in an object that contains some information that we need. We're going to say what the content type is that we're sending back. And so the content type is going to be text/HTML. So we're sending back HTML content. Now we'll say response.write, and I'm just going to do hello world. It's not very interesting, but that's okay. We'll do something a little more in a minute. All right. And now we put a response.end to say that's the end of what we're sending. I actually don't want a semicolon here. I need a little bit more. I'm going to put a dot, listen, and we're going to tell it to listen on a port. Now we've already defined a port variable for 3000, so I'm just going to pass in our port. And if we get an error, like for instance, our port is already in use by another application, let's console log that error. If, by the way, your port is already in use by another application, then just change the number to 3001 or 8000. Any of those should be fine. And so I'm going to console log my error, if there is one. And I'm going to save that. Now the next thing I need to do is I need to get it running, and we do that just the way we did before. I'm going to come in here, type in cmd to open up a command prompt in this directory. And here I've got my command prompt. So now I type in node space server.js. Okay, and I got undefined here. Now the reason it's saying undefined is because I've got it console logging the error no matter what. And there isn't an error, so it's undefined. So I'm going to make a modification here and just say error, if error, then we'll console log. We don't need to console log and have it do undefined if there isn't an error. So I'll save that. Now, I need to actually stop the server and restart it again so that those changes take effect. So I'm going to hit, I'm going to retype in node server.js. What I actually did was I hit the up arrow, which typed the previous command. And so now I'm running it. It doesn't say undefined anymore. Now, to actually see this, I'm going to say localhost 3000. and that's because localhost, it's running on our machine, and the :3000, that's saying what port it's running on. So I'm going to hit enter, and sure enough it says hello world right there. So let's come back, and if I want to make a change, I could, for instance, put this in h1 tag. It's a header 1, which will make that text a whole lot bigger, and I'll just drag my hello world right in there. And again, if I refresh, it doesn't do anything because those changes aren't going to take effect until I stop and restart the server again. So Control-C to stop the server. And then I can hit the up arrow, which will retype my last command, hit enter. Now I can hit refresh. Now you might have noticed it's a little bit tedious already to have to stop the server every time you make changes and restart it. So I'm going to show you a little bit about the Node package manager and a Node package called NodeMon, which stands for Node Monitor, even though it's spelled like no demon. It's NodeMon. So the Node package manager, or NPM as it's called, was automatically installed when you installed Node. And to access it, you just type in npm. And to install a new package, you would say install, or technically you could just say I, but I like to write it out, especially when I'm teaching people how to install in the beginning, so they remember that's what it's for. And in this case, we're going to put a -G, and that stands for global. You don't always want to use the -G, but we do want to use it for NodeMon. What that does is when it installs it, it won't install it just for this particular package. It will install it on your system globally. So you can use NodeMon for any future project and you won't have to install it again. So I'm going to say NodeMon now. So npm install -G for global NodeMon. And it's now going to go through and install all the packages necessary for NodeMon. And here it goes. And you might get some warnings. You probably don't need to worry about those unless you get actual errors. And so now to run it, I can just type in nodemon space server.js. And you can see it is watching the directory and it's starting node server.js. And if I make changes, instead of hello world, I say hello Bob. I hit save, and I can refresh, and sure enough, I didn't have to stop and start my server because it took care of it for me. It says here NodeMon starting due to changes, starting node server JS. Okay, let's make some more significant changes. So I've got my server running. I have this one little line. What if I want to have a full web page here? I could go ahead and say const web page equals, and I'm going to use the backtick so that I can do a multi-line string. And let's go ahead and write out an actual web page. Doc type HTML, create a head tag, and in the head tag maybe put a title, my web page, and you also need a body, and I could put in an h1, my web page, maybe add a paragraph. This is my awesome web page, and I'll save that. Well, actually I want to do one more thing. So I've got this variable now called web page. It's a const, which means the value can't be changed once it's been defined. And so let's replace what we write here with web page. I refresh my web page. This is my awesome web page. You'll see the title. Got it just, if I hit F12, you know, if you're on console, and just switch over to elements, and you can see that it created a head and a body, There's my h1 tag and my paragraph. My title is in there, which shows up right here in this tab. And so I've got a simple web page here. And technically, you could set up your router to go through port 3000, and you would have an actual web server, a simple one, but an actual web server that people could access from the internet. This isn't really a good idea. It has potentially limited protection and very limited on features, which is why Express is a much better option. Express is a full-blown professional web server, and we will work on creating some web pages with that fairly soon. But I wanted you to see that with the power of Node, you can actually set up a web server very easily. Alright, if you like this video, please hit subscribe. Subscribe to my channel. I will provide more content in the future and keep it entertaining for you. Thanks a lot.